basically, they got one sort of big game for the Ouya. It was called Soulfjord, and it was with this new studio called Airtight Games. Ouya kind of helped fund the development, and it was, for all intents and purposes, a really promising looking game. It used its thematical idea was just flawless. It was kind of mixing 70s funk with kind of Norse mythology, and so what you ended up with was this cool kind of beat 'em up where you played as a guy called Magnus Jones, and it looked really awesome. Here's the problem. It was basically a dungeon crawler with the beat 'em up elements, and you kind of had to learn these rhythm-based combos. The problem was there weren't that many of them, and learning them and mastering them wasn't as fun as it seemed on paper. And that was just kind of the general sentiment, was it just came out and it was just boring and null. The thematic was great, the art direction was flawless, but just the gameplay just sucked, and it wasn't like the story was too compelling either. It was funny, but it's pretty bare bones. There was also a review, I think, that pretty accurately captured this, which Screw Attack did, so I'll link that down below in the description. And I remember being really disappointed about that. And it was shortly after this, in fact, I think it may have been when Soulfjord came out, that there was a big, well, it wasn't so much big, there was a YouTube channel that I used to watch called Day of the Ouya TV, which basically every week would do kind of a recap of basically sorting through all the tripe, because obviously the Ouya had over 1,000 games on it during its kind of relevant lifespan, and that means that there was a ton of it that wasn't worthwhile. So they kind of sorted it out, and they played all the games, and they kind of did stuff. And it was either shortly after Soulfjord came out, or when Soulfjord came out, that they went under, and basically they just had to stop, and they had to, focus more time into their real jobs, because it wasn't taking off. And that was the general sentiment around the place, was it hadn't been marketed to the point where casual people knew about it, and the hardcores were disappointed. And that was the big problem. So the Ouya, it was a big load of missed potential. This also wasn't helped by the fact that a lot of people lost faith in the company when they did the Ouya Everywhere initiative, which was basically where they decided that they would license it out to people, like for example, some of the other micro consoles that were basically ripping off the Ouya's idea, like the Mad Catz Mojo and whatnot. They all got basically the Ouya store, and they could download it onto their console, and you could play Ouya games basically on a bunch of different devices. They also wanted to have it on various things like just phones in general. It never really amounted to everything. It didn't get onto a lot of things, and it didn't end up spreading a lot of the games any more than they would have by just putting them on the Google Play Store. And that was the unfortunate reality of the situation, is just people felt like they were moving away from their hardware because the hardware hadn't been successful, even though the hardware up to that point had been reasonably successful. And that was really what crippled it. It just kind of died at that point. It did continue on until about 2015. However, during that time they had an initiative called Free the Games, which was a great idea. Basically the idea was they would have some money, and people could come up with an idea for a game, do a little demo, put it on Kickstarter, and if they got to a certain amount, then Ouya would give them a certain amount from a fund of money that they had. And this was to encourage people to, bring more games to the Ouya. One of the ones that came out of it was a game called Gridiron Thunder, which is an American football game that is quite fun, actually, and it's got whole little thing about where you could keep up with like American football news and all that kind of stuff, which is, it was an interesting idea and it was fun. The problem was, it pretty much bankrupted Ouya, and that was where the things really started to turn sour. They basically just weren't making enough money to make it a sustainable business, and they needed to sell out, and they looked for a sellout in 2015. In July 2015, specifically on the 27th, their software division, so basically the store and everything, and their game kind of publishing rights, I guess, were all bought by Razer, and this was with a view, presumably, to putting them on the Forge TV, which is Razer's micro console, although nothing has materialized from that. Ouya has basically not been heard of since then. So it's basically presumed that's the end of them. They're not coming back. So that was kind of depressing. The hardware stopped manufacturing. It's done now. The Ouya's gone. In terms of the consoles, they're not making any new ones. And it's just kind of tragic because there was a really good idea here, and there were so many setbacks to it. I mean, like, I remember even particularly one funny story came out of E3 2013, where basically Ouya, they obviously hadn't released the console, so they weren't really making money yet, so they didn't want to book some floor space on the E3 floor, so they rented out a car park that was nearby, and they had like this giant big orange canister that said Ouya on the side, and people could come in and play games. And I remember the E3 guys basically called the cops on them, saying that they were doing it illegally, and the cops then came and checked their permits, and they had everything all paid up. So they just gave them free Ouya t-shirts and said, hey, why don't you come and play some games and whatever. So yeah, I think certainly victimization was a problem for Ouya in that particular case. And really, I think the ultimate reason why the Ouya didn't succeed was it wasn't marketed well enough to the casuals, so the casuals didn't know about it. And the hardcores really weren't able to get into it because there just weren't the kind of games that they were into. The idea was good, the premise was good, a lot of the games are great, which I haven't talked about nearly enough for Ouya Month. Don't worry, there are some videos after Ouya Month that will hopefully I'll review some other Ouya games. That was a bit of a mess up in terms of Ouya Month for me. But yeah, just if you're at all interested, I would advise maybe checking out the Ouya, because there were some really good games on it, some really good ideas, and it was just kind of tragic that it all had to go belly up. So that was Sayes. Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, please like it. Please subscribe if you have not already, and just comment down below if there are any Ouya games that you've played that you've liked, or if you have any thoughts on why the Ouya may not have been that successful. And I will see you next